That is outstanding. So
BJ, I'd like to interject that we are now a little past 7:30.
it is a good time check. Thank you, Robert. So, well, we will return to intros after. We'll swap it around. We'll do dessert now and dinner, more dinner later. I'd like to go ahead and introduce a ComancheZOOM regular, or at least many of you have seen Rich on other Zooms, pilot out of Gillespie Field, California, which is KSEE, SEE, who changed or helped change, participated in a change of the FAA stance on pilots flying with diabetes. And the story of how that happened and the story of the kind of discipline that Rich has instituted, and the fact that he is among the longest flying of the people with this condition, contains lessons for all of us as pilots, no matter whether we are dealing with diabetes or just being alive and becoming, and living. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Rich and to thank you ahead of time for the efforts that you and a bunch of other people went to change this for all of us. Welcome and thanks, Rich, and over to you.
Your summer travel with free cancel.
Okay, thank you, CJ. It's a pleasure to do this. I've been a diabetic. I'll just go over a couple of things. I've been a diabetic since right about the middle of World War II, and my mother was the one, which means I'm a type 1 diabetic almost all of my life. And I'm getting ready to be graduate from 3 days older than dirt to 4 days older than dirt. I'll be 80 in November, and I'm still trucking. Anyway, she kept me alive. Interesting story. She kept me alive by all of the mothers getting together every month with the ration stamps and trading stamps for one thing and another. And she traded it for food to keep me going. She landed on the diabetes because it was on all sides of her European family. She figured out what was wrong with me by the unimaginable smell of ketone on my breath. So she got it. And back in the days of World War II, in the middle of the war, number one, there wasn't really any real way to do anything with diabetics anyway. And insulin was new and there wasn't much of it. And it didn't matter because you couldn't test for it except for the P strip. And that was 3 hours ago. So anyway, she kept me going. And the way they looked at it during World War II, you won't see anything written about it, but you'll hear it talked about with the people that are still around. If everybody knows what triage is, children with chronic problems were in the third leg of triage, and everybody knew it, and it just happened. So she kept me going, and I don't know whether the world figures that they were blessed or cursed, but I'm still here. It was my thing. I would stand in the driveway when I was 2.5, 3 years old outside of Corpus Christi Naval Air Station and watch all the round motors fighters go off. And I guess it was at that point that that's when I decided that I wanted to be a pilot. Well, I wore glasses and every other thing. So by the time I got going and I was interested in airplanes like mad, models, everything else. And I was fortunate enough to meet a guy that had a tri-pacer in Southern California. And he said, if I patched up the holes in the plane, he would teach me how to fly. He says, you did it with model airplanes, radio controls. And he said, but you don't use Kleenex, you use your mother's bed sheets, bring a couple. And he handed me the World War II needles off an aircraft carrier. And he said, here, read this book. Well, it was the predecessor to 4313. And I went through it and I did it. And he says, okay, I'll mix the butyrate and we can both get high. And away we went. An hour of flight time as a trainer at 15.5. And he got out of the plane. He said, there's still an hour and a half's worth of gas in it. Let me know when you're coming back. So I said, does a radio in there work? He said, yeah. And I let him know and I landed the plane. 55 solo hours later, that was my flight training. 55 solo hours later, I went to take all my tests and everything like that. And instead of lying, which my father told me never to do because it's come back and bite you on parts you didn't want to get bit on, I checked the box that I was diabetic. Well, lo and behold, that was the end of that. And I subsequently lost my logbook and everything like that. And I just proceeded on in life. About the mid 80s, well, I went to work for the government and for who else? Naval Air Station North Island, where they had jet airplanes. And I was an avionics guy. I had my ham license when I was 11, and I knew where I was going. And so anyway, I went through the apprentice program, and 10 years of that, like 3,000 hours hands-on. And they never told me that they would sign my A&P, but they told all the trades guys. We, the twitches, didn't get told. So there was that. And I moved on to Naval Electronics in San Diego and expanded my career, but I always stayed Nav Air for the most part. And about the mid 80s, a bunch of us got together. It was coalescing, and I'll go over that. I'm just going to lead into that to get FAA to do something because the technology was ramping up for testing and all kinds of other stuff that would help diabetes. And we put together an NPRM. I'm talking about a lot of people with power. I'm basically into the presentation now, and took us 8 years. And in 1993, we got it all approved. And thank you for switching it on me. I'm sorry I didn't tell you. Anyway, the diabetes was one of the 14 no-nos in 67.401 for medicals, and that has significantly changed over the years with technology and testing. And all of these things here that I'm looking at and I'm presenting to you, it's not only diabetes, but it affected most of the other 14. And go ahead and switch. So it's, we put the work began on the NPRM, and 8 years later, we got it approved. It was a big fight between me and a guy on the East Coast in Northern Virginia. Believe it or not, he was the first one to get his medical, and I missed it by a week because we had bad weather in Southern California. You wouldn't never know it. It never rains here, but it did then. So in 1993, I got my ticket, and away I went. I had already bought my Cherokee 140 and rebuilt it in the hangar. It was ready to rock and roll. And I did most of my training in Cessnas. And I consider that a Cessna is a really nice airplane if you want to take pictures out of it and go sightseeing, but a real airplane has its wing on the bottom. So I was a Piper person. And it got done, and I went through about 5 different airplanes going to a Comanche, and I did all my own work because I had all that experience, and it was no problem. You work on Mach 1 Navy jet fighters, anything that goes on and off the carrier, it's a different view of the world when you actually are working on aircraft. And I've always said, I fly what I fix, especially my own airplane. So anyway, there was resistance in this, and the resistance was, as I've listed here, many medical professionals, many politicians, many of the flight magazines. The insurance companies were not going to insure anybody that was one of the 14 no-nos. And various and sundry deep state FAA insiders, and believe it or not, CFIs, because they didn't know what to do with it. And I have a couple of stories about that. I presented very quickly. I was known in the diabetic community anyway, and I worked for the government, and I was moving up the chain. So they wanted me to do a presentation to CFIs to tell them what to do because nobody bothered. And I said, I went through a whole bunch of stuff and all of the testing we had to do in the air, and I made them read the new 67.401, which of course CFIs are supposed to do. And they got a new view of the world. And the first question I got with a room full of San Diego County CFIs, they said, what happens if somebody freezes. What happens if a diabetic goes unconscious? And I said, you're real lucky. You just push them off the yoke and take the plane. Okay. And you can declare a medical emergency, or you can just do whatever you want to do. And so anyway, and he said, what about if somebody doesn't pass out and chokes up on the controls? And I says, it's real simple. Are you going to die today? And would you like to bring the plane back in one piece so it could be used again? And I said, you can't fight them and grab them with your fingers or hands or anything like that, because you got to take the plane anyway. And they push forward and they're locked on the controls. Cock your left elbow and stick it right in their temple. And then they'll be unconscious, and then you go on about your business. And if you hit them hard enough, you probably should declare a medical emergency. So anyway, he said, for real? And I said, it's real quick, like you're in combat. You know you're there, and all of a sudden it goes to hell in a handbasket. You got to do what you got to do to stay alive. And I said, I like myself a lot. I don't know about you. So anyway, and on to the next one.
So a quick question, Rich, before we go on to the next one. And can we go back to the previous slide for just a moment?
Okay.
So two things. First, at this point, I just wanted to note that Dr. Tom Wasser is with us. And Tom is somebody who's presented to us before. In fact, he was the brave soul who took on the very first ComancheZOOM.
Okay.
And an AME for over 50 years, a pilot himself, a home builder, and a pilot advocate. And so, Dr. Wasser, thanks for being here with us. But before we jump into the details of the technology around and the methods around managing diabetes, that is quite an imposing resistance.
Yes.
So
it's still, a lot of it's still there this far away, even after Sport Pilot and everything else and the technology. There's a lot of it still there. It just subsided a little bit. And the main problem now is the insurance companies, which they've always been the main problem on everything. So there you go, as we've talked about in the ComancheTown. And go ahead. Sorry.
Yep. No, that's actually part of the thing. The thing that's interesting is, how did the aviation community come together to make a decision like this? I mean, this is a big change. And then I'm very curious, Dr. Wasser, I don't know if you've been observing this change also to allow now commercial pilots that's just coming out. For those that saw the ComancheZOOM invite, CNN did a piece on this, and then Airline Pilots. There were two links in the invite about some of the recent news in this area of flying with diabetes that came out of this 1990s work that Rich, that you and others were involved in. So how did it happen? Like, what were the key things that had to come together?
And Dr. Tom, thank you for coming, and I'll look forward to seeing you and jump in anytime. So you come with a very good reputation, and thank you. The technology was advancing very quickly. I've been on insulin pumps for just about 30 years. And before that, I was shooting 3 different types of insulin 7 times a day. And I left every American airline plane that I went back and forth from San Diego to Washington, D.C. with wonderful injectables with the caps on and test sticks all over behind the seat. You got to do what you got to do. And I used to like to sit next to people that were needle phobic and blood phobic. And it was just the funnest thing to watch. Anyway, I can get that bad. And you know what? After a week in DC in the Pentagon and going back to San Diego, you got to do something to loosen it up. Anyway, all of these people, and there was a lot of them, and a lot of them with power, and a lot of them with connections, and a lot of people that, especially at the congressional level, they really did want to fly, and they couldn't do it, no matter what. They had to do, and I was up the food chain pretty good in DOD Navy as a civil servant, and I was back and forth, but I had access also, and I made it cross paths with some of the stuff that I was involved in. Nobody knew what I was doing anyway, because it was so far beyond top secret in communications and radar. They didn't understand what I was doing, even when I walked and what building I went into. They just left me alone. I got all my work done, believe me. And so what happened was that this started to coalesce over the technology improvements that obviously in diabetes was coming out everywhere. And there was a lot of diabetics that really wanted to fly. And the group that finally coalesced it was more or less led by Senator Inhofe, who also, all he wanted to do was fly. And there was a whole bunch of other names that were involved also. And it slowly coalesced. And there, I guess I'll jump ahead rather than go through a whole bunch of names, but the one that had probably played the major part in this was Mr. Poborensky from EAA. He wasn't a diabetic that I knew of, or if he was, I didn't know about it. But he's the one that put together, obviously, and everybody knows, Sport Pilot. So that was going on right then anyway. But everybody started to get involved in a whole lot of this stuff. And the NPRM came out, and Department of Transportation, of course, where FAA was under, they always were underfunded. FAA was always underfunded. And a lot of things like that went on, and they were more interested in other things because they had, what do they call them? Special interests beating on their doors. And I think everybody knows about that. And I'll move away from that. But I made myself have virtual unfettered access to the flight surgeon's office because it was in between everywhere I was going, and I was there a lot. And I was known in the diabetic world. And a couple of people in there knew who I was and were sorry they ever knew, but that's okay. It worked out pretty good once we all made friends. And they were so underfunded, they couldn't finish the NPRM. And it was 8 years of that. There was a lot of stuff going on, and it was being hammered out. Most of the questions were being answered by technology. It just happened that Cami had to get on board, and I had a contact or two there also through diabetes, and things were moving. I don't know who else was working on it, but I knew I was working on it because it was convenient. And so anyway, it slowly was building to a crescendo, and pretty much everything got taken care of. And we had to get DOT, Department of Transportation, on, and they needed to get this thing into the GAO because that was part of how these things got approved because of the economy, the economic justification and implementation. And I basically offered up my already tuned in services to do it on my own time. And I put together, they didn't even know how to do it. And they also didn't have the $125K for the engineering contract. I was doing that stuff for DOD in my sleep. So I didn't need any training. I asked for the format, and I put together a rough on the economic justification form using very, very, very conservative figures. And I did it in true form and fashion, DOD style. They learned something, and I gave it to them on a floppy diskette. And I said, here it is. And the guy looked at me and he said, how long did that take you? And I said, did it last night in my motel room. And I put it on a floppy at the liaison office this morning on the way over here. Here it is. He said, well, we can't give you any credit for it. And I said, all I want is that medical. I don't care about it. Just, this should help you. And guess what? You just saved $125K that you didn't have. He says, how'd you know about that? And I says, I was born at night, but not last night. And I did 10 years very close to Navy intelligence in the communications business. And he goes, okay. And I said, you don't need to go any farther. Enjoy. And they plugged it in. They plugged it in and sent it over to GAO. And shortly thereafter, DOT came on board and said, wow, you guys did a hell of a good job. I think we're going to go ahead and approve it. And there we had it. And that's,
So,
it took the final kick, something like that, plus a couple of connections I had at CAMI. So I get around. I make sure I get around. And
so in essence, though,
let me tell you, at 2.5 years old, it became an obsession, and I lived and breathed airplanes in my head and everything else, and I was going to get that medical no matter what. And I just with it, and that many years later, my dream and fantasy came true, and I went up with the examiner, and we went around in a Cessna 152 and did it. And on the way back, he called Montgomery, because we went in and out of Montgomery that day, and he said, Montgomery Tower, this is blah, 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 blah. And he said, I was down and dirty, about 100 feet off the ground on 2-6. And he said, I want to tell you people in the tower that I am now with your newest pilot. I could have pulled the yoke off the thing anyway, but I panicked intelligently and made a nice landing. So anyway, that's how I did it, and it paid off. And it was an obsession with an end goal to get that no matter what. And it took 30-some years to get it. And I've been giving back ever since. I've helped over 200 pilots through the medical thing, and I never charged them a penny. And it's worth it to me. And there was 3 companies that were charging $3,000 to $5,000 to put that stuff together. And boy, did I take it. And I said, you guys just stay out of my way. I'm going to break you. And I said, that was back. A lot of this also happened in a common area. AOPA was doing their conventions and all over the country when they got 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people. And you all remember that. Too bad it went away, but it worked. The timing was perfect. So that's basically how it went together. There was a lot of work done by an incredible amount of people that really had the same obsession and a dream come true. And there was, the close-in group was somewhere between 500 and 600 people scattered all over the country. And it all ended up in DC. And that's how it went.
Okay,
Quietly.
so let me just
Quietly.
interrupt you for a quick moment and just back up for a second, because you've done a ton of information, and I want to just break it down and make sure we kind of understand. So there were big organizations like EAA, led with terrific advocacy from key individuals like Poberezny.
Yes.
And then
he deserves a set of gold angel wings for what he's done for aviation and all of us pilots. Believe me, he did stuff that people are still finding out. Sport pilot was the biggest one he ever did, and it solved an awful lot of problems.
Neat. And it's so, even after his passing, we're still finding sort of the wonderful Easter eggs he laid around for us to find. Is that what you're saying?
Well, he was the redheaded father of basic med. There you go. Yes. And for that, there's no way that anybody ever could have done such a job that would allow people with a bad 14 to be able to ever get their pilot's license. And a good buddy of mine is a 7.8 pilot. He got about 30,000 hours in all kind of Boeings from 707 on. And he just got over a heart attack. He's a class 1 pilot going through all that stuff. The heart attack wasn't really bad, but it was a heart attack. And in the old days, I also got my license with a triple bypass with no infarct, right along with the diabetes. But anyway, he got climbed back in that 7.8 in 6 months, and he's up there rocking and jamming. And this kind of stuff
let me
would
just
have
bring
never
you
been
back.
done. Yeah.
Just bring you back to the general process. So you said there were 600 or 700 people, along with some of them in the form of large organizations like AOPA's Medical Services Group and EAA.
Not so much AOPA. EAA for sure. Not nearly so much with AOPA. And I'm going to leave that one alone.
Okay. And then you're also suggesting that that key people with political influence, such as senators and the like, that wanted to fly.
And a lot of them.
A lot meaning a dozen?
More than that, there's a lot of people with diabetes, and older people have more diabetes than younger ones. And a lot of these people have that kind of a type A personality, and they're around it. And you know, it was fuzzy. That was years ago. And don't forget, I'm 3 days older than dirt, so some of it's gone away. And a lot of them I didn't know, and a lot of them that other politicians did know. And so we just all, it was just all a big happy family, and rank and privilege had nothing to do with it because we all had a common goal. And
So there really was a huge organized group working on the financial justification, the medical
yes,
justification.
yes.
And so,
And we,
okay.
and when we brought the technology in, this was a loosely coupled organization. I don't know if you could call it an organization. It was people attending to an obsession is more like it, to get a dream. And once we brought Cami in, and I'll just drop the name. I don't know if he's still around, but he's been around. Dr. Silverman was a major player in this. I got to meet him at an AOPA convention, and he and I got to be chat buddies. I'll talk to anybody. So, especially if it's to my advantage, that don't cost anybody any money. So anyway, we got, and I was known in the diabetic community already, because I do, tomorrow morning at 0500, I'm going to be at a lab doing a 9-hour clinical trial with IVs stuck in me. So I do this stuff all the time, and it's for the good of the order, and it's to get this technology out there. Okay. I'm in 3 international diabetic organizations. When I say international, it's just like this. We don't know what country is watching in here. We know Adam's here, but we don't know a lot of the other people that are watching this. So
yep, Jim Peters here from Australia. So
yeah,
we've got Tim's here from Canada.
Yeah, that's the way it works. And there was people from all over the place. So anyway, that's how this thing went together. And a lot of people never met each other, but the word went back and forth because email was coming up also at that point. That was one of the things where communications went back and forth. And like I say, a lot of us didn't know each other, but we knew what we were all doing. And people picked their places where they applied the pressure that they could apply to keep this going. And it was just pick something and pick and choose it and make sure that it goes good. It's amazing when you have a single obsession and goal, how it takes care of itself with the people that are smart enough, that have the power and the what it takes to go after something they want really, really bad. And this was the proof of it, and it worked. I'm here to tell you.
Just a quick interruption. Dr. Wasser, I did not prep you for this at all. I apologize, but you were an AME during this period as well. And so if you, and some of the other 14, forbidden conditions, there's been some changes on that as well. And if you prefer not to, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you do have any thoughts or opinions on some of these changes and how they've been coming about, now would be a great time to jump in and add them. But you'll have to unmute.
Hey, Rich, while he's doing that, Mike Moran up in Chico, maybe you could fill him in a little bit on the difference between type 1 and type 2. And perhaps the differences in documentation in order to get the medicals.
Okay, they've made a lot of changes on type 2 based on type 1 because of technology. Type 1 diabetes is is the portion of your pancreas is not part of the pancreas, is residing in the pancreas. The Isles of Langerhans is what they call it. Has T cells that make insulin, okay, and all of the controlling situations that go around it. Now keep it in mind, I'm not an MD or a PhD, but I am a smartass. Anyway, and I've studied this to the max, and I can compete with the doctors in a talk about it. With the T cells, diabetes type 1 diabetes kills the T cells. So that part of your pancreas no longer secretes insulin into the system. And a lot of the doctors were very negligent in a simple blood test that can tell you. It's called C-peptide. And I'm sure Dr. Ted's sitting there shaking his head. There's a certain level. If you can't measure that protein, or there's 0 or very low, you're a type 1 diabetic, and it will never get better. Type 2 is above that, and a lot of T cells are broken, and there's other things going on with type 2. So type 1, you have to shoot insulin. You don't have a choice. I'm on a pump, and I did it the hard way. I also learned how to give injections to my grandfather and sharpen his needles when I was a kid. So I've been back all the way through that. But now the technology is so simple. This pump that I'm on, I'll get into that after a bit. Anyway, and that's the difference between you can control, and I'll just cruise into this next thing and keep going.
Well, before you do that, Rich, I'm going to just ask Dr. Wasser to jump in for a moment.
Thank you.
CJ, can you hear me?
Yep. Hey, Tom, you're not quite loud and clear. You're a little faint, but I hear you.
Thank you, CJ. Well, Rich is quite interesting.
Nope, Tom, you are too far from a mic. You've got sound, but not enough.
How do you turn up the mic?
Nope.
I've got it in really good. Maybe it's my computer.
Yep. Tom, I'm going to shoot you a link to dial in from your cell phone. You can be in twice.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah. And I'll keep, and CJ, I'll keep going here, okay? In the interest of time.
And yeah, Tom, not sure about it today because I know we've been loud and clear in the past, but bear with me when this gets into your text window. Just click the link and it'll add you in.
Yeah. Can I keep going?
Go ahead, Rich. Thanks.
Okay.
Yep. By all means.
So
Thanks.
The treatments are different, but I'm going to get down here to the testing part after I get to the other part. Everything about diabetes has a baseline, which is diet. Okay, and I've got it right on here. It's still the mainstay for control and management. And let me tell you something. Down there under management, cheating always turns back your life's clock because it never gets better. And it's proven over and over. I've learned, I was writing my book and I gave up. It was too boring. 1,001 ways to prepare diabetic cardboard and eat it. And it's all about diet. And I looked in the mirror when I was a lot younger and I was trying to lose weight and quit drinking and everything else that I did bad as a young guy. And I said, now's the time to tell yourself whether you're going to live to eat or eat to live. The decision was easy and I'm still here. And that's what it is. And then you make other things about yourself that better, and they get better once you quit eating all the crap. And it's that simple. My 55-year-old oldest daughter did not have the survival mechanism, and she died on a dialysis machine of a heart attack after they started cutting her parts off her body from toxic septicemia from type 1 diabetes. And it's all done in each person's head. There's a lot of groupthink about this, but you got to look at your eyes, look at yourself in the mirror and say, am I going to do this? And there you go. So anyway, but I'll get back to this. And it turns out that the treatments are a lot alike. The type 2s don't, a lot of them now are on insulin, but they, if they're getting really bad and their A1Cs are high. You guys have all heard this A1C. It's hemoglobin A1c is what it actually is. Anyway, and it's the number of sugar, it's the amount of sugar that's on each red corpuscle. And there's a percentage of that relationship. And even in the NPRM, the FAA put a limit from 100 to 300, which is milliliters per deciliter or whatever. I don't give. You know what? I don't know. Anyway, and you got to be between those two. My personal minimum and maximum is 125 to 225. That gives you a lot of margins on both ends. But that relates to a A1C chart, and at 300, it's past what they want. But 300 is okay, but the A1C to that is not okay. So it wasn't an exact science. Anyway, the treatments now with the new stuff for type 2, they're using injectables, not necessarily insulin, but they are, and other types of stuff. We with type 1 are on insulin, and they're doing a lot of experimentation. The deliveries, and I'm going to go into that, pills, that hasn't changed. Insulin, injectables, pumps, and patches. Patches are new, and a lot of them are under clinical trials. I hope to get on a couple of them. The insulin pump has been the godsend because it just makes your life easier. You don't have to carry around all those injectables in a cartridge belt with ice on your insulin. And the testing now, it started out being pea sticks, which is real barbaric. It tells you what happened 3 hours ago, which doesn't do you any good. And the finger stick is the main way of telling what your sugar is at the time. CGM, which is continuous glucose monitoring, coupled with an insulin pump, makes your life a lot easier because you got your graphs right on there, and you can see it. I can take out my phone and look at the app, and that stuff is going like mad, and it's all going to be that. The type 2s now, with the insurance companies, are insuring the CGMs like Dexcom and several others, and you don't need a pump. You can inject, but you can always see what your sugar is, and you can get the trends of it going up and down. It's made such a difference, and that's the technology.
Rich?
Yeah, go ahead.
Have you heard about that Afreeza?
Yeah, I've even tried it, and it works. It's really quick. It's the most technological bong you've ever sniffed in, and it does work. The problem with using it as a pump, with the pump, you can't tell the pump that you just put it in your system, so the AI software and the pumps can't use that as part of the way it computes your control. So you got to be pretty careful with Afreeza. If you're going real high, real quick, and you've been a bad person, and you take a snort of that, they make it in 4, 8, and 12 grams. And if you take a snort of that, your sugar comes down very quickly. And I've tried it because I wanted to try it, and it does work. It's not what you should use all the time, and type 2s are using it, but the doctors don't. These endocrinologists is the other problem. They don't know how to tell you how to do that, and a lot of people don't have a affinity to feel out what they're doing, and they go up and down and up and down and up and down, and that's the most dangerous part of diabetes because it destroys the capillary blood system in your body. So
Yeah,
that's why you want to keep everything nice and easy.
Yeah, using that stuff in the doctor's approval is the only reason I know about it is because there's a stock ticker MNKD, and a buddy of mine told me to buy this stuff because his daughter's diabetic.
Yeah,
and it says it's the best stuff, but the problem is acceptance is, as you said, is the trick.
yeah, and you can't just go out and do it on somebody's word. You have to have an endocrinologist that understands Afreeza. Yes, it works. Yes, it's a wonderful tool. Yes, it's very dangerous. Like everything else, you've got to use it correctly, and you've got to stay managed. Kids have a hard time doing that, and I'll leave that where it is. So, yeah, the thing that she needs to be, if she's not on it, she needs to be on a continuous glucose monitor like Dexcom, which is now paid for by most insurance companies, including Medicare. So, and it has an app, and you talk to it, or you can have its own monitor that comes with it. It's the thing that helps more diabetics stay controlled than anything else is that CGM. It's got a sensor, a transmitter, and it talks to something, and the sensors are good anywhere from 3 to 10 days, depends on who makes it, and they work. And so anyway, going into management, understanding the 24/7, 365 interfaces, you've got it for the rest of your life if it's type 1. If it's type 2, they're trying to come up with a cure for it, but it's not going to happen. You can control it to keep it from going totally to type 1 to a certain point. They're still doing experimentations on that because the testing techniques are getting much better and they can do it more internally and have a better idea what's going on. There's an area that diabetic testing is in its infancy, and the stuff out there is phenomenal. And they're going to under the skin stuff and built inside. That's all in clinical trials now, and it'll make, you're never going to get your T cells back. Well, you are if the United States gets off their bottom end and allows the use of stem cells, because they've got a they have a way of doing that. And at Scripps University out here, there's a guy, one of the doctors is wearing an internal pancreas. I saw it. It's in a group that we're in. There's 6 parts embedded in his back and his sides. He's been on it for 4 years, and he was a brittle, hard diabetic type 1 when he was a kid. And he's virtually depending on that thing as it's grown into his system. I wanted to get in the clinical trial for it, but they told me that I couldn't because I'm too old. They said nobody over 55. And I said, why? And they said, because if you die in the middle of it, you're going to cost $3 or $4 million and the stem cells that went with it. I understand that, but they got a couple more coming up that are much smaller and have a different way of doing it. Hopefully I can do that, but we'll see, maybe not. But anyway, and if you cheat, it turns your clock back, maybe a little, maybe a lot. And if you keep doing it, this is what happens. You go early and not pretty. So you can go ahead to the next one. Is he back on yet, the doctor? Okay, well, I'm going to keep going.
He is, and that would be a great time. Thanks a lot. So,
Okay. Yeah, come on
wait.
in, doctor.
Hey, Tom.
No joy.
Dr. Wasser, you'll need to hit *6 on your phone, and that will unmute you. And then, what does CGM? That's a Rich question.
Oh,
I know
what
it must
about
mean glucose monitor, but what is the C in?
continuous glucose monitoring?
Gotcha.
I'll-
And then for Dr. Wasser, on
here,
your cell
I'll
phone,
show
you'll
you-
need to.
I'll show you one, CJ. I'll show you one. See it?
Okay.
It's on me.
Sounds fine.
Okay.
Ah,
And it's
and
talking
Dr.
to the
Wasser,
pump.
you'll need.
Okay.
Perfect.
It
You're
says
unmuted.
I'm unmuted. Okay, CJ. There's a lot of information. Richard is intimately aware of all this type 1 diabetes treatment. My awareness is type 1 diabetes, insulin-dependent diabetes. Generally, AMEs defer to the FAA, and then communication goes between the FAA, Federal Medical Branch, and the pilot candidate. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Loud and clear.
Do you hear me? So I don't get too involved. I'm aware of several pilots that have glucose monitoring devices, and I think that's great. There's an echo. Hopefully you can't hear the echo. Is that correct?
It's acceptable.
Okay, it's acceptable.
We do hear
I'm
your
sorry.
echo. What's happened is that your mic on your video device has started to pick up. And so
well,
you'll just want to
maybe-
move your phone away from your video.
Maybe, right. I'll put the video aside completely and just talk on the phone. So,
Yep, you already fixed it.
type 1 diabetes. And the other thing is, of course, it's class 3. There might be onesies and twosies of class 1s, but it's pretty rare in my awareness. But class 3, the hobby pilots, are certificated with insulin pumps. If they go through all the hoops, of course, the main thing is the safety of flying and to make sure the pilot's conscious and alert and safe to fly. And the pilot has to prove that. I don't know the schedule, but they have to very frequently monitor their blood glucose.
Correct.
And,
Every half an hour in the air and a half an hour before landing.
Right. There you go. And
Yeah.
that's all the cookbook FAA requirements. This is my awareness with third class. The FAA is more liberal because those are pilots that most of the time are flying in a plane with one or two souls at the most, and they can justify maybe being a little less safe, but certainly not with class 1 pilots, so they're the airline pilots. And I don't remember the statistics, but they throw those up every 3 years when we have meetings.
Yeah.
And the number of class 1 pilots is very minimal, very minimal.
Doctor,
Richard, congratulations.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, a quick interrupt. The
Yes,
CGM and the basal pump are making a significant difference in the class 2s and class 1s because the sugar, the glucose is instantaneous. And I'm on a Medtronic 770G pump, which is a basal pump. Yeah. And it has, and let me tell you, you've got a lot of leeway with the CGM, and I keep a solid 6.3 A1c. And it is solid. And so anyway, but they're looking, but with the class 1s, there are more and more flying. The nice thing about class 1s is that you've got a right seater that's every bit the good a pilot as you are if you're in the left seat.
Right.
So
and you're to be congratulated because you're very motivated. And you can't make the assumption that every pilot is going to be as motivated and fastidious as you, Rich.
Correct.
But if they were, then many more pilots could be certificated. But I think that goes in the mix of the FAA deciding if that a given pilot is safe to fly. And are there other illnesses, comorbidities involved, heart disease, kidney disease, other types of endocrine disorders? But you've been through the hoops, so I mean, I'm amazed. I'm in awe. So congratulations. What else? Well, with an aviation medical exam, then you would have a special issuance that is time limited, 5 years, 10 years, and goes for third class year by year, during which you present the information to the aviation medical examiner. And if there's no change and things are stable, the instructions from the FAA to the pilot may say that the AME can issue and then send in the medical information. So there's a couple of different approaches.
Yeah,
but,
I have my 6-page instruction letter attached to this for people to read it. I'm not going to go through it. It'll be in the archives. It's very different.
And by the way, usually in that letter is instructions to take that information to the aviation medical examiner, so he'll have to work with. Now I get a copy of all that information if I have seen the pilot candidate. But if it's a new AME, he doesn't have that in his file. So that's why you're instructed to take that to your aviation medical examiner to evaluate and start at that point with the pilot.
Yeah. Basic Med has made quite a few changes in this, and it's expanding. They're a little looser about the old 14 with Basic Med, and it's a 4-year ticket. I'm going through it now. So,
Rich, there are some misconceptions about that. I have Basic Med myself. I think that's the best in America, 4 years instead of 2 years or 1 year.
Yeah, correct.
But you have to have had a special issuance in the last 10 years.
Yes, that's correct.
And go through the hoops that we all know about with Basic Med. But really, the bottom line in the eyes of the FAA aeromedical branch is you should have the same medical standards as AME. There's a bit of a misconception about that, but the standards are the same. It's that Part FAA 67 that's been interpreted by the aeromedical branch and the FAA and so forth. But that's a misconception. You should, it's the family physician, the licensed physician in the state in which you get the basic med has to sign that document that has the same significance as me as an AME signing your medical certificate and sending it into the FAA.
Yeah.
So you got to be a little careful about that.
Yeah, well, I'm having,
the standards are the same.
I asked my AME, my longtime AME, if he would issue for me, and he said, yeah, I will. Because my general practitioner, she's not into this stuff. She don't want any part of it. So I went back and and that's what I'm doing now. And I've been on the same regimen ever since.
Yeah, that's great if your AME does the basic med. Most AMEs, compartmentalize that and either do the AME exams, or as a licensed physician in the state can do basic med. I just do AME exams.
Yeah.
But because the concept is the pilot to get the basic med should go to the family physician internist that knows that pilot best and has a record of the history of the pilot's illnesses and can evaluate that judiciously and determine if they're safe to fly, and has to sign that statement in so many words that it's safe to fly.
Right. So yeah, it's getting better every day for all of us.
Good.
And
I mean, I advocate. I suggest to my pilots they do basic med. I said, why are you here? Go. And the bottleneck is finding a licensed physician that's willing to do that. You know the bottleneck. Sometimes it's the medical insurance company that doctor has insurance with. Sometimes it's a hospital they work for. Sometimes they just don't understand but flying because they're not pilots, so they think planes are going to fly out of the sky. And there are a lot of bottlenecks, but I encourage it. I think it's one of the best deals in America. Of course, we know the limitations. You can't fly over Canada, and that may change.
As a type 1 diabetic, I can't fly out of CONUS, no matter what, even with a basic med. So I would love to fly the Can-Am Highway in that Comanche, but not yet. And the Canadians also are on the other side of that too. So I understand why. I understand why on both sides. And you can always land a Comanche on the Can-Am Highway and hitchhike to a gas station, I guess.
Yeah, I think you've done a great job. The key is very frequent glucose monitoring. You have the schedule, and evaluating if there are any other what's called comorbidities, other illnesses, and demonstrating that you're safe to fly, and having a cooperative AME. And you've done all the above, so congratulations.
Yep, and I've done it for two reasons. One, I want to still fly, and the other is I want to live long and prosper. I can see you're motivated. Yeah, let me get through the last part of this, and then we can do Q&A. Flying with diabetes, stay healthy and in control. That's a given, and it's not just for the diabetes; it's for everyone else. Every other one of the 14 no-nos. Make sure you're in glucose range before you get in that left seat, according to 67.401. Make sure your passengers know you're a diabetic. It makes all the difference in the world. The ones that are scared, they get out and you save fuel. Isn't that wonderful? So anyway, follow the rules set in Part 67.401. They're pretty specific and they make a lot of sense. That was something that we tried to stay right on top of when we did that NPRM, that it had to make sense. And it does. It ended up being pretty good. CGM is the best representation of technology because it's on 24/7 and you can see it and the pumps and also the CGM machines that are not on pump, they are alarmed up the butt and you can't sleep through it. They rattle you, they shake you, and they scream at you with sirens if you go below a certain number. Okay, and they do work. Most diabetics dehydrate quicker at altitudes. I do. I put my cannula on at 8,500, not 12,500, because I dehydrate fairly quickly. And I use the standard 0.6 of a liter of oxygen, and then up at 12.5, which Comanche, of course, does that with ease, you go to 1.6. And the pulsing oximeter that they put on your finger, they used to be $600. Now they're $50 to $60. I have one in my plane, and I use it, and it gives you a lot of information. And if you use that thing, chances are you'll never have to worry about hypoxia, because you're going to turn around and go low and go home. You can read it right on there on your oxygen absorption, and it is it's the least expensive and the most valuable tool you can fly with. And the last one is know when to get out of the sky. Don't lie to yourself, and don't kill your plane or anybody with you, and have a nice flight. And thank you guys for listening. Any Q&A?
Hey, Rich, let me toss this out while you still got the oxygen thing fresh in your mind. I put some information in the chat window. Now, I admit I've never flown with this thing, but I've slept with it now for 1.5 years. It's a little ring you put on, and it vibrates. If you get below a certain level, it starts vibrating softly, and it goes all the way up to as high as you've set it. And they're pretty obnoxious. And this thing
I've heard of that, but I've never seen or talked to anybody that had. That's good to know. Thanks.
What's it monitoring?
It's monitoring oxygen, right?
What is the ring monitoring that you put on your finger that vibrates?
Did we lose him? I think it's oxygen. I think.
Well, yeah, Tom Wasser, of course. I have a Series 6 Apple Watch that does oxygen monitoring. And
no, it's not the same thing. This deal here, it records it a couple times a second. It'll record for 11 hours. It's all, you know, you download it on your computer and you get a report. It records motion at nighttime, so I can tell. I've got a thing, when I first lay down, I go low on oxygen. I'm not wearing that CPAP mask. And I figured out it's because I use Afrin to clear up my nose, and I don't have the problem. So, but this thing, this little Get Well UE ring, they're about $115. And I've had the one I'm wearing right now for 1.5 years. They're reliable, and they last 11 hours, which is more gas than we carry. And they'll vibrate if your oxygen goes low. And you get to set the level of vibration and also the level where it goes off. So if you got to wear one of these.
How high have you been in your Comanche altitude-wise and paid attention to it? Curiously.
I've never wore this thing in an airplane.
I'd wear it and go up to 12.5 and see what it does. I think it'll be very interesting. I would like to know, and I think a lot of people would like to know.
Well, okay, I haven't yet, but I'm just saying, I'm throwing out there, if you're using a pulse, you know, Hans was talking about, he's got something in his dashboard, he sticks his finger in every now and then and gets the reading. This thing records continuously, and it alarms if you go down below a level. I think it's just a wonderful tool. That's what I got for that.
Wow.
So now we have two tools, because Doc Wasser just said he's got an Apple Watch that continue. And Tom, does it alert like Chris's ring?
No.
Okay.
Does it record?
So it's like, yeah. It's just
yeah, but
recording.
Chris, what I like about your ring is that it alerts, and that way, as pilots, one of the things that that we know happens to us is we can get lower in oxygen at night, and we also know our vision is affected at night at higher oxygen levels. If I recall, Dr. Wasser, is that right? Or I guess Rich, you know this as well. So I'm thinking this is a great safety tool.
Exactly.
I'm going to go look at one.
Right.
I am.
Right.
I mean, they're $115, and you wear it at night, and you'll learn a lot about how you sleep. And just plug it into your computer the next morning, and you get a report. I've got 1.5 years of reports on this laptop. It's the
Can you
most
put-
amazing thing I've ever bought.
Can you put
Money.
the name of it and stuff and an address on the chat line? So
I
we can
did.
see
It's
it?
in the chat.
Oh, good.
Oh,
I'll look
great.
for it. Oh, good.
Well,
Good,
now
good,
I'm
good.
thinking, yeah, because if our quality of sleep gets better, we have like a better, more fun life. Plus, we heal better. But also, as pilots, if I can wear that ringy thing at Pi and find out that my oxygen's getting a little low,
Right.
that's real interesting.
Somebody said 165. They might have gone up. I mean, the thing's probably made in China. This is the second one I bought. The first one, the band went bad, and I gave it to somebody else, and I bought another one. This one's lasted this long, but it's
Right.
rugged, and I just highly recommend it. But and for me, the sleep is the biggest thing. I've taken my reports to doctors and showed it to them, and blah blah blah, sleep apnea, wear a mask, blah blah blah. Bullshit. You don't have to wear that mask. My problem is when I first lay down, I'm too lazy to breathe, and it's because my nose is clogged up from cutting grass all day. Wonderful little ring. It'll teach you a lot. So I'll get off my soapbox. That's all I can add.
Too lazy to breathe is pretty lazy. Hey, so
Pretty funny.
what does this information, does it go to your, maybe I missed out, but does it go to your cell phone? What do you hear the tone from the ring? I mean,
It vibrates. It'll wake you up at night. It starts at a real low vibration. When I first lay down, go to sleep, I can just feel. Actually, I've learned I can feel it in my body that my oxygen is getting low, and then this thing will start kicking off. You know, just very gently. It takes you about 6 or 7 or 8 seconds when you take a big yawn for that oxygen to get all the way to the tip of your little finger and turn
Right.
this thing off, which is pretty. You know, it takes oxygen that long to actually recover.
so
But,
it's a pinky ring, in other words?
yeah, I put it on. Well, they tell you to put it. It only fits on my pinky. I got big hands,
Okay.
and I just highly recommend it. And for sleeping at night, it's taught me a lot about, and I sleep a lot better.
So
Some nights it doesn't go off at all anymore.
So is the threshold for the alarms, is that settable, or is that
Yes.
just something that comes with the ring?
No, you set it, and you can also set the max alarm level.
How do you interface with it? Do you need a
Bluetooth.
Their app on my
IP or
laptop,
something?
no, it's a USB cord,
Oh, okay.
Oh,
and I just plug it into my laptop. The Chinese
you
are
don't-
probably.
You don't have it with you right now, do you?
Yeah, I do.
Can you show it on your screen? Can you share your screen? I'd like to see.
I don't know. I'd have to take all the tape off my camera because I don't like people spying on me.
Well, how about
Let
if I
me
close
figure-
my eyes and then open
Let
them?
me
real quick?
well, let me figure out how do you switch from a static picture to, oh, I'm on.
You're on.
Right.
Yep.
you're on. Turn the camera on.
Oh,
You're
yeah,
on.
there you go.
There
Cool.
it
There it
is.
is.
And that's on
Now
your.
let me
That's
make
cool.
it read something.
Yep.
Okay.
Here,
All
hold on-
right.
Hold on a
And
second.
Chris, you'll need to hold it in front of your image and move it slightly to
yeah,
keep your
No, I'm gonna put it on here. You can see it reading.
Just hold it real
Oh, yeah.
steady there.
I think
Oh,
if you hold
yeah.
it,
Oh,
Well,
look at that.
that's really nice. Yeah.
You see the
That's
little
cool.
pulse going up and down?
Yeah.
That'll tell you
Yeah.
how strong your pulse is.
Okay.
There's
What's
nothing
your-
wrong with 97%.
Well, that's because I'm active and sitting here, but I've got it at nighttime. It'll go down. I don't know how to pull up a PDF report. If I could, I could show you guys a report, but I highly recommend this thing.
So the 97%, is that the percent of the relative O2 you're supposed to have right now? Is that what
That's
that
a
is?
good number, by the way.
It's a
I've
good
never
number.
seen higher than
97,
99.
never, 97, 98, and occasionally 99. And you're on top of the world.
That's the pulse, correct?
No,
no,
that's the
that's his
oxygen, the
oxygenation level.
percentage, yeah,
Oh, okay.
of
Oh, okay.
oxygen absorption. Yeah.
Yeah, boy, you're
Sometimes-
oxygenated good.
Sometimes my pulse is under 60 at night. Sometimes my pulse is about 85 all night. I don't understand that either. But you know, this little tool is teaching me a lot about sleep, and it beats the heck out of wearing a mask.
Yeah. I
So
tried
Rich,
that
in
too.
your case, Rich, you might be able to wear this thing while you're flying and not have to worry about putting your little finger in that little clip-on thing and taking a reading while, instead of looking out the window.
I'm going to go out. I'm going to go out and probably buy one because that's really handy. You're right. And when I get high enough and I don't want it on my finger or turbulence, I got to put it around my neck on a shoelace, and then I use it if I need it. But this, all I got to do is just look at it. And by the way, the other thing that I was going to put in this thing and didn't, the hottest thing in the world today is sensor technology. It's making the difference in everything. And sensors are intelligent sensors. And between NASA and the automotive community, they have taken the sensor technology to the highest level you can imagine. And it's made all the difference in the world on everything. If you got a kid that wants to go to college and is interested, put them in there, $300,000 a year job with not a hell of a lot of experience.
Well, I got into this O2 stuff when that Wu flu stuff started hitting back in early 2020. And I started with those little fingertip things, and I found this, and I've ended with the fingertip things. These, there's no watch that does this that I know of. They
What do
won't
you do
record.
with the information?
What do I do with it?
Yeah.
I look at it the next morning. I'll tell you another thing I've got too is I bought myself one of those little recorders, a little Sony recorder, and $50, $100. And when I first started doing this, I'd set it up on my nightstand, and I could correlate the time and the activity and in the stuff for the ring with the sound I would make. If I'm gasping for air or not. And after a while, I figured out that wasn't my problem, and I finally figured I was just laying down. I quit. I'm too lazy to breathe or whatever, and that only lasts for about 10 minutes, and then I'm good. So that's what I've learned with this thing, and it's
Well, now that you have that information, what do you do?
well, now I don't do anything. Oh, what do? I yawn.
Yeah.
I've relearned how to yawn.
Oh.
And
I have a CPAP machine myself, and I've been using it for several years now, and I'd like to get rid of it.
Well,
I was lucky. I qualified. My throat qualified for sleep apnea surgery, and it solved the problem. And fortunately, they put that CPAP on me and that sleep mode with the wires on me. My body said not a chance.
If I
threw it off my
yawn
face.
before I go to sleep, I don't have that trouble. Super
Yeah,
saturated or whatever it is.
I had that my sleep apnea episode and my CPAP and everything, and it was pretty weird because having gone through firefighting school and stuff, the minute that thing would go into positive pressure, I would wake up because that's what happens when your bottle runs low if you're in a firefighting scuba thing. And it was like, holy mackerel, man. I kept sitting up like we're gonna and so I gave it up, and I don't know what happened. For some reason, I just got out of that phase, and I've been okay. But I think it had to do with I had a weight gain too. But
Yeah, that
your
affects sleep
physiology
apnea.
has so much to your physiology has so much to do with it, and but the CPAP thing did not work out for me psychologically, just like it did for, I'm sure, some of us that are on the
Well,
screen right
CPAP
now.
machine worked well for me. The only thing, I look like a harnessed horse in the morning.
This ring will wake you up if you stop breathing.
Dude, that CPAP machine is awesome. Even when I go take a nap, I'm wearing that thing.
Good for
Oh,
you.
it's the
That's
best.
Yeah, well, I'm saying it works for a lot of people. Other people that didn't. I used to try to pretend like I was flying a F-16, and fantasize I was a jet pilot there, but didn't get that going enough to deal with it.
I'm interested in this conversation for two reasons. One is at ComancheTown, CPAP machines were fairly common, and they also didn't work very well on generators. They really wanted the regular voltage and the levels of a wall plug, and so.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they need a nice clean 60 cycle power supply. Yep. So if the cycles go down as the generators load and unload, they can't keep up with it. So,
Yep, they got a
Yeah.
little cranky. So
Yeah.
part of what's so interesting about this conversation is that we've got you and Chris saying that you were able to dispense with CPAP machines. And in Chris's case, in your case, it looks like you handled it with a change in weight in particular.
yeah.
And in Chris's case, it sounds like there was some kind of biofeedback going on. Chris, is that what happened with the
When
ring?
I lay down, I stop breathing. And if I yawn before I lay down, remember yawning? You know, the good old art of yawning. I've relearned that. And when I do that, it supercharges my system, I guess, and I go to sleep a lot quicker. And the ring shows I don't have any issues. Otherwise, it'll wake me up and tell me, hey, idiot, you're not breathing. And it's only when I first lay down. And the rest of the night, I got this thing recording. I get up in the middle of the night, take a pee, I lay down. It'll happen when I lay down again. And then I yawn and I'm asleep. So I love it. I don't have to use a mask. And I've shown this to doctors and they poo-poo it. They say, oh, yeah, no, sleep study, you know. And the medical industrial complex wants us on all these machines and things. I'd rather just wear this ring and get a good night's sleep.
Well,
Yeah,
I think Chris makes a good point too, because there's the physiology and the psychology too. And, in Western medical philosophy, we've always tried to separate the physiological and the psychological, but I'm telling you, there is no getting beyond the interlocking aspect of that, because I swear, I was trying with all my heart and soul to adapt to that contraption. And man, the minute it would go into positive ventilation, the high vents mode, I'd be up and ready to hit my reserve bottle because I was fighting a fire again.
Well, boy, I'll tell you what, fortunately, for the diabetics, the CGM works for like 99 and not 99.9%. And very few people have any physiological problems with it. And the thing works. And you've got an instantaneous reading of where you are and the trend that goes with it. Fortunately, it's made all the difference in the world.
That's
What's
great.
the name of this unit?
Say again?
What's the name of the unit? Where do you get it?
It's posted into the chat window. Go to Get Well U, which is get well, like get well soon, only UE. So getwelluniformecho.com. I'm kind of thinking we should try to do a group buy, because even for those of us who don't have apnea or a CPAP, the idea of just having it along while we're flying is really intriguing.
When I bought this thing,
put me down for one.
When I bought this thing, they sent me an email and said, hey, we'll give you this much off if you get somebody else to get one. So they're probably very receptive to that. And I don't know.
You want to shoot them an email?
I've had it for a year and a half, and I am very, very tickled to death with this thing. It's some of the best money I've spent.
That is interesting. Cool. Well, I'm on there, and if you want to shoot an email to marketing@getwellu.com, letting them know you're a satisfied customer and that you are interested in getting a professional group you work with involved in a substantial purchase, if they'd be interested, we could work together to get a group buy put together, just like we've done with the laser altimeter.
Well, sure, I'll do that, and I'll take that action. But the thing is, I haven't, I'm still learning how to fly again, and fly my plane. So I haven't had the thing over about 5,000 feet, but I believe it would do a great job. You get up to where our wing likes to fly, and
yep,
I'm dying to try it. It's just maybe this weekend I'll go play with my plane and try it.
When you do, let us all know, okay? And I'll tell you what, I'll buy one anyway. It's better than having the pulsing oximeter hanging around my neck.
Well, when you buy it and you use it, Rich, why don't you back up how you like, how your user experience with it is, and back up what I'm saying, because I'm 100% 10 out of 10 on this thing.
Well,
okay.
When I was doing my instrument rating, I was flying with Field Maury, who's taught, he's actually got 36 34,000 hours in the air, of which 26,000 are dual. And he would bring his students up over the Rockies with a pulse oximeter to determine what the oxygenation levels were at altitude at 18,000 feet without supplemental oxygen. So since he had, he could be flying and we could be checking. And this, and so what became clear is it was individual. Some people retain great oxygenation at 18,000, some don't. And then we've learned that that changes over time and with conditions. So this seems like a really great safety enhancing tool. And Chris, I'm psyched that you're gonna get in touch with them. And I think we might be able to make this available and really, have a great use for it both at night, improving quality of sleep, and in the air, improving safety.
Well, the fact that you guys have already had 70 altimeters go out, and those are 600 and change, and you're only going to use it on landing. Yeah, maybe. I mean, just, I'll just tell them we got a bunch of old pilots. But yeah, they mention aviation too, so they're not allergic to aviation on their website. It's one of the applications they put in there, but you never see them talk much to it.
Yeah. Well, what you said about learning how to breathe and yawn is fascinating. Like now I'm going to go to bed tonight and try to yawn a couple of times before I go to sleep, just to see if, because who knows, maybe many of us do this and many of us would get better sleep going over that initial hurdle into sleep. And when we have our ComancheZOOM on older pilots staying sharp, a tip like that, especially if a couple of people in this ComancheZOOM right now, go ahead and try yawning a couple of times when we lay down before we go to sleep and see if we feel like we sleep better in the morning. Next week, come back and let us know how the experiment work. I mean,
I always yawn during ComancheZOOM, so
oh, touche.
No, not really.
But honestly, there have been several group buys that came out of people's suggestions in ComancheZOOMs. I know I fly differently from some of the tips that people have given. And this is how we make progress. One of the ways. So Rich, are there any lessons?
This is also pretty typical Comanche stuff. In the hot rod world, Mopars are famous for this. It's a $160 ring, guys, and we're going to ask them for a group discount. But I'll do it.
It's a $160 ring, but having looked at the electronics costs over time, it was part of my career. The margins on that are probably not terrible at all. And we're Comanche pilots, we love group buy discounts. So if that gets it into a greater percentage of the population because there's a discount and we're safer because of it, what's not to love?
Well, you can mark them up and sell them to aircraft sprues. I haven't seen them in their catalog.
There you go.
Does anybody else?
Aviation thing.
Does anybody else besides me start looking at things in terms of how many gallons of gas that is?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Automatic divide by 5.
That's why I said, tell everybody in your plane you're diabetic and see who gets out. You'll save a lot of gas.
Hey, everybody, just wanted to let you know that the Skymanor fly-in to November 40, probably not going to happen this weekend due to hurricanes and such coming up. But on your screen, it's got the August 28th one, and September 25th, there's the elections are going to be at Gulf Echo Delta, Delaware Coastal in Delaware. So keep those in mind and plan for the future.
I'll just throw in another one real quick. This weekend, Sunday, is the South Carolina Breakfast Club. They're having their fly-in at Triple Tree, which is SC00. That's a 7,000 by 200 foot pristine grass strip. Anyways, and so once you fly in one time to the South Carolina Breakfast Club, you're a member for life.
And Alan, would you repeat the date on that, please?
I believe it's this Sunday, which will be August 23rd.
And I just want to say that the Triple Tree Aerodrome is a place not to be missed. So if you can make it, it's kind of convenient to anybody who's not too far south, not too far north, and not too far west.
Correct.
Kind of if you're east of the Mississippi. So it's South Carolina. It's a really amazing place. It's a private, super long grass strip, and everybody who goes there
They'll
says you should
probably
experience it.
be, I think, for you, typically on this kind of thing, for just a South Carolina Breakfast Club thing, there'll be at least 50 airplanes. I was there when they had the, one time when they had the solar eclipse. We probably had, I think, 800 airplanes at the airfield.
Yep. And Alan, shoot Pete Morse an email at piper32p@gmail.com.
Let me write that down. Hang on,
Okay.
Piper.
piper32p@gmail.com.
Okay.
Oh, by
And
the way,
it'll
this
end up-
Sunday is the 22nd of August, not the 20th.
Correct. I'm sorry. It is the 22nd. It's the day after my wife's birthday, which is August
Yep.
21st. I better know that. So.
Right. And if Bob Ferris is still in here and wants to say a few words about the August 28th fly-in, and then I want to come back to the Delaware Coastal in a couple of minutes. Bob Ferris, are you still in? So that's to Mount Airy, and that sounds pretty interesting. Let's see, so people are starting to wrap up because we're pretty close to 9, but for Delaware Coastal, if you cannot make that, please send an email to piper32p@gmail.com. He'll relay that to the election committee, but request a ballot if you can't make it, and we'll send you a paper ballot to fill out and return. So please vote.
CJ,
Go ahead,
I
Rich.
want to, before everybody leaves, I want to give my personal thanks and appreciation to everybody that helped me bolt this thing together in a hurry and do the PowerPoint. And I do it in public so that everybody knows that I really do appreciate it. And thanks everybody for hanging in there. And I'm available all the time for questions on this because I get a lot of people asking me that want to fly. So I'm around.
Cool. And did you see the chat window? Because if not, there's been some pretty interesting discussion, and
No, I
kudos
did not.
to you, Rich.
I did not, and I'm gonna, as soon as I can get over there, I'll shuffle through it. So I guess for all practical purposes, we're done with Q&A, and I'll go look at the stuff.
Well, I just want to take a moment to thank you, because it's not only is it inspirational that you and a group of other people were able to make such a major change to a terrifically entrenched stance, but a thank you for all of the people who you've helped get through the medical approval process so that they could fly.
Well, I give back.
Safely.
I do give back, and it helps everybody. And I don't have to answer too much for the bad things I've done to karma when I get trying to get through. So, you know, there you go. But yeah, it's I don't have any problem with that. So no big deal.
Well, thank you again for talking to us tonight and for everything you've done for everybody over the years. Thank you for giving back and paying it forward. It's an inspiration.
Yeah, the proof of this, you want something bad enough, you'll do just about anything plus or minus to get it. And if you got a group of people, the energy is exponentially combinatorial, believe me. So,
well, Dr. Wasser kept commenting on your level of motivation, and
which I appreciate.
Yeah, but it also told me, the way he was saying it, that it was something he looks for and at as a doctor. And I think that your level of motivation may have had something to do with the number of people who helped you get through it.
Right. My original AME was an old guy out of World War II, and he went into private practice, and he was an air guy. He flew things that the Wright brothers left in the junk pile out in back of their bicycle shop. And anyway, he helped me through this too. And he always wanted to fly too. He never did tell me what was wrong with him, but he had a pilot's license. And after he retired, he went into Doctors Without Borders. And
Ah.
he knew a lot about the original stuff with diabetes, which was very, very interesting. So I got lucky with the people that helped me out, and I managed to do the thing that most people don't do: pay attention.
Absolutely.
Before everybody takes off, I've got this thing I was fortunate enough to inherit. It's for a single engine twin Comanche. It's a maintenance manual.
Wow.
For a PA-24 and 180s and the PA-24,
Oh, wow.
180 and 260. It's all original. It's like got that nice old style writing, and authorship, which makes sense compared to the newer manuals. And it's for a single engine. I also got one from the same individual for a twin, which is what I have. I have virtually no use for this thing, but it's really nice. And if anybody wants it, you can give me a call. I'll put my phone number up in the chat, and you guys can pay for the shipping or whatever, because it's heavier than heck. And anyway, I just wanted to bring that forward before everybody took off.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
Well, CJ, I think it was on this site, Mike Moran here. On this
Yeah.
site, I think you're starting a library. If he shipped that to
Exactly.
you, just include it in the library and everyone would have it.
Yes, the docs.northeastcomanche.org online library.
How does that work? Do you get the actual thing, like the actual thing shipped out, or do you guys scan each page and put it in a digital format? How does that work? I don't know.
That's exactly how it works. So we can scan each page. It's even better if you
Yeah,
scan
I'm
each
not gonna
page.
do that.
I can't imagine why not. No, we do have some pretty fast scanners, and then Matthew Aaron Smith, whose email address is oneredjeep@gmail.com.
Yeah.
One spelled out. And Matthew is sort of a master library creator and software guy, and he takes these documents and he puts them into the library to be available to everybody. And what's been so helpful about that is, for decades, people said, I'd like to be able to see this on my computer or my cell phone. I'd like to be able to access it in flight.
Right.
And suddenly all of this stuff becomes available. A
What I
big
love
push right
about
now. Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying, what I love about this is I inherited this from a guy who gave me my first ride in a twin Comanche about 22 years ago.
Oh, that's awesome.
And he sold it, and he had this hangar full of these maintenance manuals, and he knew I was flying an airplane similar to his and got in touch with me and gave them to me. I also have a manual of the Robertson STOL conversion for the twin Comanche, which I never saw before, but it has all the different specs, and it's actually the preamble to it says it has to be in the airplane if you have a Robertson conversion on your airplane. But I never saw one before. It's kind of neat, but I can, if you promise to give me that one back, I'll send it your way.
How long is it? Because there is a very simple and very effective scanner app.
It's about
that you can.
How long is okay, so this is how long this one is. And the other one's about half this width.
Gotcha. So you're still gonna not be wanting to be the one that's doing each page.
No, and I'm not really.
Yep.
Is
Can't
that
blame you
maintenance
at all.
manual? Is that single engine maintenance manual, the one for electric flaps? What year is it?
Let me see. Didn't apply to me, so I didn't study it too much. 72, 73, I think.
They didn't make them, and they stopped in 71, didn't they?
No,
72 they stopped.
That's a revision. Sorry. Well,
that probably covers them all if it's that revision. It's probably got all of them.
Probably does. I mean, it's like monster things here, I mean, crazy.
Oh my goodness.
All original stuff. I love it. I was thinking of even copying some of those black and whites and framing them and putting them around my den because, you know, I think they're cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do too. Yeah, so I think the point about putting that into the Docs online library is a really good one. We'd love to be able to scan
Right.
that before it goes anywhere, and
Yeah,
yours
yeah.
too.
I kind of like it too because it's got notes from all the people that have had that airplane since, you know, some guy signed on the dotted line. And kind of neat to see the little personal notes like, don't do this. I cut my finger on this bracket, you know, whatever.
Robert, where are
Really?
you located?
I'm in Northern California. I fly out of Concord, but
Holy
to,
shamoly.
Charlotte. Yeah.
I'd love to DM you because I have an R-stole on my mostly Miller twin Comanche
Ooh.
that's hangared at Livermore right now.
Oh, really? Hey, we're neighbors.
Yeah. So I'd like to see if I have all the information that's in that R-stole kit book that you have, and that I could get it back to you. I just want to make sure I have all the
Cool.
information one way or another. So
Yeah,
love to touch
I've been
base.
trying to do is figure out where this bulletin 9 or whatever it is, that give you a quick retract system that lets you put down full flaps legally. I don't know if you're aware of that or not.
With the R-stole kit
Yeah.
installed?
Yes, there's an AD that says you can only put it down to 15 degrees flaps legally and land it.
And until you have the interconnect kit?
Till you have the quick retract kit, and the quick retract kit is rarer than hen's teeth, apparently. You just can't, I don't know, but.
This is awesome. I'd love to get more information on this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I fudged it a couple times and landed it with full flaps, and I mean to tell you what, it flat stops when you flare and drop it on the runway. It just gives up the ghost, and you're turning off at the first taxiway.
You have the R-stole kit on yours.
Yeah, I love it.
Okay.
It's really cool.
Okay. Yeah. Beautiful.
Anyway, Fred, thank you.
It was
Thank you.
typical Robertson on the stole kits. I had a Cessna 185 with the Robertson kit on it.
Mm-hmm.
Do your ailerons come down with the flaps?
Yeah, they droop with the flaps. And
Yeah.
one thing I've noticed with the droop flaps is when you make a crosswind correction, when you're cross controlled, you need to really hammer the ailerons to get the balance between the rudder and the ailerons, because they're biased down. So if you need a little up, you better give it a lot of up to sustain your crosswind correction.
The ailerons come down with the flaps to 15 degrees. And then as the flaps continue down to 27, the ailerons come up a little bit.
Right. But I've never, like I say, I only explored the full flap thing a couple times because I was curious, but because it's got that limitation in the POH, you don't fool around with that stuff.
You're getting real close to the ground at that point.
Yeah, it's close to
tough
the
time to
ground.
be
And I
experimenting.
certainly wouldn't ever do it until I had landing assured and I knew that if I lost an engine, I was going to be okay anyway. The whole point of the STC was years and years ago, somebody came down with this kit with everything deployed, max drag, and had an engine failure and attempted to go around, and it didn't go around. It
No.
sat there, and when they tried to retract it, one came up faster than the other, which induced a roll, which induced a tragedy. So it's not something I experiment with. I just was, how us kids are. We had to try it twice.
Yeah. Well, Fred and Robert, when you guys get together, I just did a quick Google search and it looks like Staples does scanning. So I'm wondering if we do some
You're
exploring.
working me, aren't you?